Hey everyone, it's Allison Kinnear, Voice of Her Own, and every Wednesday at 3 o'clock I come on and talk about living and learning. And today I was planning on talking about getting in the groove, and it's still a topic that I want to talk about. But as I kept wrestling with myself this all morning and all afternoon long, I was like, is this my topic? Is this my topic for today? Is to talk about getting into the groove? Because I was thinking about, we've kind of passed the crisis point um, of when this first happened, and we've adjusted and we're in this period of adjustment. And now we're kind of in the long slog of the unknown. And while that's what I wanted to talk about, or at least I thought I would talk about that. I have to be honest with you. I need to talk about what's on my heart. And hello, thank you for joining in. Hi, Deborah. Thanks for commenting. Um, and I haven't really prepared much for this, but I wanted to speak from my heart because I didn't want to talk about getting into the groove because that assumes the privilege I have to even talk about that. And privilege meaning not necessarily, I will probably be talking about white privilege, but just the privilege that I have to be able to have a home, to have some income, to not be on dire straits, as I know so many people are. They're either on dire straits because they are losing people or have actively lost people because the people they love or they themselves are on the front lines because their businesses are collapsing with no help in sight. So that, yes, that is a groove, and that is something that it's like there's acute pain that we have, and then sometimes that acute pain becomes chronic. It's like it doesn't let up. And I was talking to my sister-in-law, who was talking about some people are not getting unemployment and the state's not giving unemployment benefits and forcing people to go to work. And so people are having to really make these choices in these times that are beyond tragic. And around, do I feed my family or do I try to find a job that could potentially make me, that could put me in harm's way? And when I see, last week I talked about cleaning house and being able to remove people from social media. And one of the things that I found to be so incredibly triggering were the comments that were saying things like, you can't tell me what to do with my body. And that is something that I know many women have been saying, you can't tell us what to do with my body. These are and it's interesting, right? Because we all wear seatbelts. We all have to take off our shoes when we go to the airport, and none of us did anything to deserve that. But this is the sacrifices we make for public safety. And I feel like the conversations that we're having, both people who are politically on the right and politically on the left, are kind of joining forces in this really strange and unusual and heartbreaking way around um, around deciding where our individual liberties lie versus the responsibilities to our communities. And it's hard. It's hard for us to hold these two conflicting forces in our hands at the same time. And the reason why I'm bringing up privilege and why it's so heavy on my heart is we have had people recently in the national news. George Floyd just died at the hands of a police officer for forgery. We have people with weapons, mostly white people with weapons, coming into state houses and screaming in the faces of police officers while we have peaceful protesters getting, who are peacefully protesting wrongful deaths, murders of their brothers and sisters, and getting blasted for that. All of these things just reek of privilege. And if you don't know what privilege is, or if you're triggered by that word, I totally understand and I get that. If you haven't done that work to understand, because we can grow up poor, we can grow up in abusive families, we can grow up in really having really troubled childhoods, and yet there are privileges that can come with the color of your skin in this country. And so if you're interested in just learning more, if you just can open up to some curiosity around that, I know the article that I first read that began to open my eyes to seeing things was Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. And it basically talks about, I didn't choose to be white. Nobody's choosing to be black. We are born in the families that we are all born into. And, but there are certain privileges that are afforded to people with lighter colored skin than people with darker colored skin, to white people rather than black people. And I was thinking about it the other day when I went for a run. I went for a walk in the neighborhood and I went for a jog. And I was thinking about the black man who was just murdered while he was out on a jog. And somebody was saying, as a black man, when I go on a run, I smile and I wave to everyone I see. And I don't do that because I'm really friendly. I do that because it protects me. And I don't have to worry about that. As a woman, I have to worry about going to my car late at night. That's something that maybe men don't think about. And as a white person, as a white woman, when I go on a run, I'm not thinking about I'm going to be friendly to people to protect myself. So these are ways in which, we can only see what we can see. It's not like there's something wrong with us or that's bad or that we're doing anything wrong, but rather the way we grow up, the norms we accept are just, it's part of the soup we're steeped in. And that doesn't make us bad, that doesn't make us wrong, but it does put the responsibility for us to learn how to be different. So just like for many years, for women, it was like, protect yourself, women, so you don't get raped. And so the burden was placed on the woman, on the more likely the victims of things, rather than putting it on the men to say, hey, you might want to think about consent and not raping people. So we are now in these shifting times when we're going, hey, wait a second, why are we putting this responsibility on women? Why don't we also include men in this and learn to engage, like, what are we doing wrong by our men? How are we not, how can we do better on this? And the similar thing needs to happen for us when it comes to race. And I will tell you, I'm living right now in a very white area, and a very conservative area as well. And so it's important to me, I'm always kind of on the alert when it comes to my children and the kinds of conversations they're having with their friends and the kinds of conversations that they engage in, not just about race, but about all things. Last night we were reading a book and two boys kissed each other, and my son had a reaction to that, and I said, well, boys can like boys, and he said, I know that, but I didn't know boys could be boyfriends with boys. And I said, yes, they could be boyfriends, they could be husbands, and he was like, how does that work? And I said, it works because they're two people who fall in love. So these are the things that, these are the kinds of conversations that for our white, hetero, cisgendered families that we can have, not only to educate them, but also to just create a more accepting, loving world. This is not about being politically correct or doing things so we don't get in trouble or say the wrong thing. This is so if we want to raise loving, kind, inclusive, amazing human beings, then we have to do our part in that. And that means we have to do that part for ourselves, and we have to do it for our children. So I know I come on here and I talk about living and learning, and I talk about life, and I talk about real things, and this may be like, wow, why is she talking about this? But I'm talking about this because it's important, and I'm talking about this because it's a platform, and I'm talking about this because it's something, one of the pinnacles of privilege is never having to think of race. One of the pinnacles of privilege is never having to think about your race. I don't often think about being a white woman. I have to make myself think about being a white woman in this world. And so, and if you talk to any person of color, any black person, they will tell you that they think about race a lot more than that because they don't have that privilege. And there are small micro moments that can lead to really dangerous situations, as we just saw in Central Park. And so it's just a plea to invite more curiosity around this part of us. It is truly a blind side. It is a side of us that is invisible. That's why unpacking the invisible knapsack is so important. because it is truly invisible, and the systems that we live in make it invisible to ourselves. So I just encourage you to get curious, to learn, to research, to read, to get out there, and more importantly, to reflect on what this means to you. And if you need support around that, I have people that I can point you towards. I'm happy to engage in conversations, respectful conversations. If you're gonna like slam me, flame me, then I'm not interested in that abuse. I'm not gonna abuse you for your thoughts. However, I'm also not gonna put a lot of energy in it either. So that's what's on my heart today. It's pretty heavy, I will say. And I also think that this pandemic is really exposing a lot in us, not just individually. It's exposing a lot in our relationships with our children. It's exposing a lot in our relationships with our partners. It's exposing a lot in our relationships with work. And it is exposing a lot in terms of our societal systems as well. Christy, how do we use our privilege for good is a great question to ask oneself. Absolutely. And I am, one of the things that I just recently, I took a class called Working Towards Woke from Trudy LeBron and Louisa Duran, and they're amazing people. I suggest you follow them. And that's one of the questions that they really help you explore in a really safe, respectful way. That class was just a game changer for me. And one of the things I learned about was something called white centering, how we can, as white people, unintentionally put ourselves in the center of the story. And what do we do? One of the things that I've been thinking about when I talk about imposter syndrome, and I realize I'm telling my story, and my story is the only story that I tell. And so one of the things that I'm really challenged around is like, oh, wait, I'm putting my story as a white woman front and center. But what about all of the many other people who suffer from imposter syndrome as a direct result of being a person of color, being a part of a marginalized community, all of those factors? How can I try to bring those voices up front? And how that's a way I can leverage my privilege to make sure that gets put front and center. So it's definitely something that I am thinking about in the background as I continue to move forward in my coaching business so that I can really create a more intersectional community moving forward. So I will leave you with that. I will put the article for the Invisible Knapsack in the comments. I suggest you read it. Read it with an open mind. This is one of the things that we can do. This is one of the gifts. We can give, we can listen, we can lead with curiosity, and we can do some real introspective stuff. It's just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the starting point. So I'll put that link in the comments below. And Working Towards Woke, Deborah, WOKE. That's kind of the term people say. It's like, oh, I'm real woke around when it comes to allyship for marginalized communities. And so that's the name of the program. It just ended. I think they do it once a year. But I'll put a link to their work as well. They have a podcast that is really amazing to listen to. And I will put that in the comments as well. All right, wishing you a wonderful week of living and learning and being curious. And my achy heart goes out to all of you who might be having your achy hearts. And I promise we'll talk about getting in the groove later on, but this needed to come out first. All right, take care. Have a great week.